1 year later, Sarah stood at the podium of the Grand Boston Hotel, the same crystal chandeliers sparkling overhead. The ballroom was packed with survivors, advocates, and law enforcement representatives attending the first national conference on romance fraud prevention. But it wasn't the crowd that made her pause. It was the empty chair in the back, reserved for monitoring James's parole officer. The criminal case had ended 2 months ago. James took a plea deal when faced with evidence from multiple jurisdictions. The judge's words still rang in Sarah's ears. 5 years, no possibility of early release. It wasn't lifetime, but it was a start. "A year ago, I stood in this room believing I'd found perfect love," Sarah began, her voice steady. "Today, I stand here having found something far more valuable, authentic strength." She gestured to the women seated in the front row, her original support group. "We turned our pain into power, our shame into purpose." The Phoenix Project had evolved beyond her wildest dreams. They'd helped identify 5 other professional relationship scammers, created a database for tracking fraud patterns, and launched a victim support network spanning 3 countries. Catherine Chen's legal team had successfully lobbied for stricter fraud legislation in 2 states. "But our greatest achievement isn't in the numbers," Sarah continued, pulling up a new slide. "It's in the stories of recovery." The screen filled with photographs, women rebuilding their lives, starting businesses, helping others. Amanda had opened a cybersecurity firm specializing in digital dating protection. Jennifer was writing a book about financial fraud prevention. After the speech, as attendees mingled during the reception, Sarah felt a tap on her shoulder. She turned to find a distinguished-looking man in his 40s, wearing a well-cut suit. "Ms. Mitchell," he said, extending his hand. "Michael Richardson, from the Thiel Foundation. We're interested in funding the Phoenix Project's expansion to Europe." Sarah studied him carefully, noting the genuine warmth in his eyes. The old Sarah might have been instantly charmed. The new Sarah had learned to trust differently. "I appreciate the interest, Mr. Richardson," she smiled. "My team will be happy to schedule a meeting next week. We can start with a proper due diligence review." He looked surprised, then impressed. "Of course, I wouldn't expect anything less." Later that evening, Sarah sat with Lisa on her apartment balcony, sharing a bottle of wine and watching the Boston skyline shimmer. Her phone buzzed with a text from Catherine. Richardson checked out. Full backing confirmed. "Ready to go international?" "You know," Lisa said, noticing Sarah's smile, "I saw how Michael looked at you. He seems genuine." Sarah took a sip of wine, thinking of the careful background check she'd already initiated. "He does. And maybe someday I'll be ready to explore that. But right now," she gestured at her laptop, open to the Phoenix Project's new European initiative. "I'm in love with this life I've built. The real kind of love. The kind that makes you stronger, not smaller." She looked at her reflection in the window, seeing not the woman who'd once desperately sought completion in a man's approval, but someone whole, powerful, and at peace with her own company. The fairy tale ending wasn't about finding perfect love. It was about becoming perfectly, authentically herself. The studio lights felt hot against Sarah's skin as she sat across from the CNN anchor. Her navy blazer, chosen carefully for authority, suddenly felt too tight. The segment producer had promised soft questions about relationship fraud, but Sarah could read the predatory gleam in the anchor's eyes. He wanted drama. "So, Sarah Mitchell, founder of the Phoenix Project," he began, "your organization has helped identify 3 major relationship scammers in the past month alone. But let's talk about James Cooper, the man-ho?" The image appeared without warning on the studio screen behind them. James's face, that practiced smile, the scar she now knew was manufactured by stage makeup. Sarah's throat closed. The room tilted. 3 months of therapy hadn't prepared her for this ambush. Her voice cracked. The panic attack hit like a tidal wave. Usually, she could hide these moments, but under the merciless studio lights, in front of millions of viewers, there was nowhere to hide. Then she remembered Dr. Kane's words. "Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is show your vulnerability." Sarah took a shaky breath. "I'm having a panic attack right now," she said directly to the camera. "And that's okay. This is what recovery looks like. It's messy, it's real, and it's nothing to be ashamed of. The anchor shifted uncomfortably, but Sarah continued, her voice growing stronger. You showed his picture hoping for a dramatic reaction, but this isn't about him anymore. It's about the thousands of women who've reached out to the Phoenix Project, women who thought they were alone. The segment producer was signaling frantically from off-camera, but Sarah was done playing by their rules. These scammers count on our silence, our shame. They want us to be perfect victims, either completely destroyed or magically healed. But healing isn't linear. Some days I run a national organization, and some days seeing his face still triggers a panic attack. Both versions of me are valid. Her phone exploded with notifications as social media lit up. #MessyHealing started trending. Women shared their own stories of recovery, of good days and bad days, of strength in vulnerability. Back in her office, Sarah faced another challenge. Catherine Chen, now the Phoenix Project's legal advisor, had hard news. 3 victims have enough evidence for criminal charges, she said, sliding over a thick file. They want you to join the case. But Sarah, he'll come after you. All of you. Sarah opened her laptop, showing Catherine an email that had arrived that morning. From James. 2 words. Stop now. He's already threatening us, Sarah said. But here's what he doesn't understand. She opened her desk drawer, pulling out a sealed envelope, evidence she'd held back, saved for exactly this moment. I'm not his victim anymore. I'm his worst nightmare. The envelope contained proof of his biggest scam yet, one that crossed state lines and involved federal charges. Sarah had waited, building her case meticulously. The marketing director in her knew timing was everything. File the charges, she told Catherine. All of them. It's time to show him what real power looks like. Sarah stood in the gleaming lobby of the Morrison building, holding a gourmet cupcake box from James's favorite bakery. Their 3-month anniversary deserved a surprise, she thought, smoothing down her silk blouse. The security guard smiled as she approached the directory, but his friendly expression shifted to confusion when she mentioned James Cooper's firm. Cooper Ventures? I don't recall any company by that name, he said, scanning his computer. Which floor did you say? Sarah's chest tightened. 15th floor. James Cooper, the managing partner? The words felt strange in her mouth, as if she was suddenly speaking a language she didn't quite know. The elevator dinged, and James stepped out, his confident stride faltering for just a fraction of a second when he saw her. Then his usual warm smile spread across his face as he approached. Darling, what a wonderful surprise. He kissed her cheek, then turned to the guard. Tom, this is my Sarah. I've been using Anderson, my middle name, for the business. Rebranding, you know how it is. He winked, and the guard nodded, though Sarah noticed he didn't quite meet James's eyes. That evening, as Sarah was hanging her coat in James's pristine apartment, a crumpled Tiffany receipt fluttered from his jacket pocket. Her heart skipped. Was he planning a surprise? But the date caught her eye. 2 weeks ago, a white gold bracelet. Her birthday wasn't for months. James. She held up the receipt, trying to keep her voice light. Should I be acting surprised about something? He laughed, reaching into his briefcase. You've ruined my surprise, sweetheart. He produced an identical bracelet, still in its signature blue box. I was saving it for our anniversary dinner tomorrow. The explanation was perfect. Too perfect. Later that night, as they sat on his leather couch watching a documentary, Sarah noticed something in the reflection of his darkened windows. James's laptop screen showed the distinctive interface of a dating app, even as his fingers moved across the keyboard, and he spoke about urgent work emails. She forced herself to breathe normally, to keep her eyes on the TV. Her mind raced back to other moments. The business calls he always took in the hallway, the dinner reservations he changed at the last minute, the networking events where he never introduced her to his colleagues. Everything okay? James asked, closing his laptop with a smooth motion. You seem distracted. Sarah met his concerned gaze, noting how his expression was picture perfect, like everything else about him. Just tired, she lied, realizing with a chill how easily the deception came to her own lips. Big presentation tomorrow. He pulled her close, kissing her temple. She breathed in his familiar cologne, wondering if another woman had memorized its scent. The documentary droned on, but Sarah's mind was elsewhere, mentally cataloging every inconsistency she'd dismissed, every red flag she'd painted pink through the lens of love. The crystal champagne glass tumbled from Sarah Mitchell's hand in slow motion, her breath catching as she watched it fall. Just as she braced for the crash, a swift hand caught it inches from the marble floor of the Grand Boston Hotel. Sarah's eyes followed the hand up to meet a pair of striking hazel eyes and an amused smile. "I believe this belongs to you," the stranger said, straightening up with impossible grace. His tailored charcoal suit fit him perfectly, but it was the small scar above his right eyebrow that caught her attention, a slight imperfection that somehow made him more intriguing. "My hero," Sarah replied, accepting the rescued glass. "I guess winning Marketing Executive of the Year doesn't improve my coordination." "Ah, so you're Sarah Mitchell," he said, his eyes lighting up with recognition. "I was hoping to meet you tonight. James Cooper." He extended his hand, and she noticed the elegant way he carried himself, like someone used to commanding attention in any room. The annual Marketing Excellence Awards gala swirled around them, but suddenly the crowd of 300 seemed to fade into the background. James' attention felt laser-focused, as if she were the only person worth noticing in the entire ballroom. "The scar?" he said, catching her glance. "Childhood accident. Tried to save a baby bird that fell from its nest. Taught me to always protect beautiful things." His smile held a hint of vulnerability that made the story feel intimate, shared only with her. As they talked, Sarah found herself drawn into James's world. He spoke about his venture capital firm expanding to Boston, but listened even more intently to her stories about building her marketing career from scratch. When she mentioned her love for modern art, his eyes lit up. "Have you seen the new exhibition at the Gardner Museum?" he asked. "I was planning to go this weekend. Perhaps we could." Their first date turned into a 6-hour adventure. They started at the Gardner Museum, but ended up walking through the public garden as sunset painted the sky in shades of pink and gold. James knew the history behind every statue, making the familiar park feel magical and new. When he draped his jacket over her shoulders as the evening air cooled, the gesture felt both chivalrous and natural. The next 3 weeks passed in a whirlwind of thoughtful texts, surprise lunch deliveries to her office, and impromptu weekend trips to coastal towns she'd always wanted to explore. James remembered every detail she mentioned: her favorite flowers, purple dahlias, her coffee order, oat milk latte with an extra shot, even her childhood dream of learning to sail. What impressed Sarah most wasn't the grand gestures, but the small moments. The way he helped an elderly woman with her groceries without hesitation. How he asked genuine questions about her friends' lives when he met them. The gentle way he interacted with her nephew at a family dinner, getting down on the floor to build Lego structures together. Sarah had dated enough to know that perfect men didn't exist, but as she watched James charm her skeptical best friend Lisa over dinner at his suggested farm-to-table restaurant, she allowed herself to hope. Maybe, just maybe, she'd found someone who could be perfectly imperfect with her. Sarah stared at her dining room wall, now transformed into a digital crime board. Her marketing skills had found a darker purpose: tracking a predator. 3 laptops ran different programs, one monitoring social media aliases, another mapping financial transactions, and a third logging IP addresses from dating sites. "Got him," called out May, a cybersecurity expert she'd met through the support group. May's fingers flew across her keyboard. "He's created a new profile on Elite Singles, Seattle area, using the name James Preston again." Sarah's heart raced as she pulled up the profile. Same scar, different backstory. This time he was a successful pediatric surgeon. The profile was expertly crafted to attract accomplished, empathetic women. She'd helped create similar targeting profiles for marketing campaigns. Seeing her professional skills twisted like this made her feel sick. "There's more," May said, her voice tight. "I found his target. Catherine Chen, 34, just made partner at her law firm. He's already connected with her." Sarah's phone buzzed. A text from Amanda. "Police report filed in Chicago. They're calling it a civil matter, no charges. Of course they are, Sarah muttered. She'd heard it before. Too sophisticated, too complicated, too much he said, she said. The system wasn't built to catch men like James. Lisa looked up from her laptop. Catherine's Instagram shows she's attending a charity gala tonight at the Four Seasons Seattle. She paused. Sarah, no, you can't. Book me a flight. Sarah interrupted, already packing her laptop. I'm not letting him destroy another life. 4 hours later, Sarah stood in the Four Seasons lobby, her heart pounding. The hotel's marble floors and crystal chandeliers reminded her painfully of where she'd met James. Now she was here to stop him from using the same script on another woman. She spotted him first. That familiar profile, the calculated charm, as he leaned close to a striking Asian woman in a blue gown. Catherine Chen, right on schedule. Sarah's hands shook as she pulled out her phone, opening the video she prepared. Walking toward them felt like moving through water. James saw her first, his eyes widening for a fraction of a second before his smooth mask slipped into place. Sarah, what a surprise. Hello, James, she said, her voice stronger than she felt. Or is it Dr. Preston now? She turned to Catherine. I apologize for interrupting, but there's something you need to see. The next 3 minutes changed everything. Sarah's phone displayed a compilation of evidence, photos, bank statements, police reports, and testimonies from other victims. But it was James's reaction that truly exposed him. His mask cracked, revealing flashes of rage as he realized his Seattle operation was blown. Hotel security approached, drawn by the commotion. James smoothly tried to paint Sarah as a deranged ex, but Catherine, brilliant lawyer Catherine, was already on her phone, documenting everything. The video of James's meltdown went viral within hours. #CatchAConman started trending. Women from other cities came forward. The story exploded across social media, not just exposing James, but highlighting a pattern of sophisticated relationship fraud that had been hiding in plain sight. That night, in her hotel room, Sarah's phone lit up with messages from the support group. You did it, Amanda wrote. You actually did it. Sarah looked at her reflection in the hotel window. The woman staring back wasn't a victim anymore. She was a warrior, and this was just the beginning. Room 1542 of the Grand Boston Hotel looked exactly as it had 3 months ago, down to the champagne chilling in the silver bucket. Sarah stood by the window, her reflection overlaying the city lights below. Same green dress, same subtle perfume, all carefully chosen to recreate the night they'd met. The only difference was the laptop on the desk, connected to the room's large TV screen, and Amanda waiting in the adjacent room ready. The soft knock came precisely at 8. James entered with a bouquet of purple dahlias, her favorites. His smile faltered slightly at the room choice, but recovered instantly. Feeling nostalgic, darling? You could say that, Sarah replied, accepting the flowers. How was New York? Productive. The mergers finally. Strange, Sarah interrupted, her voice steady despite her racing heart. Because according to this receipt, these flowers were purchased in Chicago this morning. She placed the bouquet's receipt on the table between them. Same florist you used for Rachel's arrangement last week. James's expression shifted, subtle, but she was watching for it now. Sarah, I can explain. Which explanation would you like to use? She moved to the laptop. The one you gave Amanda about your sick mother in Seattle, or the one you told Jennifer about your tech startup in Philadelphia? With each name, she pulled up their photos on the TV screen. Or maybe you'd like to explain this. She played the video Amanda had recorded yesterday in Chicago. James's face drained of color as he watched himself proposing to Amanda with the same speech he'd been rehearsing with Sarah last week. You're upset, I understand, he started, his tone shifting to soothing concern. But there's clearly been a misunderstanding. Drop the act, James. Or should I say James Anderson? Or is it James Preston in Seattle? Sarah's voice cracked slightly. 3 years with Amanda, 8 months with Rachel, 4 months with Jennifer. And me? What was I? The Boston franchise. His transformation happened in an instant. The warm concern vanished from his eyes. replaced by cold calculation. He straightened, and suddenly she was looking at a stranger wearing her boyfriend's face. Impressive research, he said, his voice entirely different, harder, more clipped. Did Amanda help? She always was the persistent one. The door to the connecting room opened, and Amanda stepped through. We all helped, she said quietly. All 6 of us. James's laugh was chilling. 6? Oh, darling. Try 12. Though you missed the ones in Austin and Miami. He sat down, loosening his tie. Want to know the funny part? Each of you thought you were special enough to change me. Even now, you think exposing me will matter. It already has, Sarah said, pulling out her phone. Because while you've been talking, this entire conversation has been streaming live in our support group. 28 women, James. All of them watching right now. All of them finally seeing the real you. His mask slipped completely, revealing a flash of pure rage, before shifting to cold amusement. You have no idea what you've done, he said, standing. But you will. He moved toward the door, then paused. By the way, Sarah, that story about saving the baby bird works every time. The door clicked shut behind him, leaving Sarah and Amanda staring at each other, both shaken by the glimpse of the predator who had been hiding behind their perfect boyfriend's smile. Sarah's finger hovered over her phone screen, staring at the Instagram notification that would shatter her world. Under James's latest post, a business dinner photo in New York, someone named at Amanda Rose, 88, had commented, "Missing you in Chicago. Can't believe it's been 3 years since our first kiss at Millennium Park. Hashtag 3-year anniversary." The timestamp showed yesterday. The same yesterday James had sent her selfies from his crucial meetings in New York. Her marketing director instincts kicked in as adrenaline coursed through her veins. Sarah grabbed her laptop, created a new folder titled Research, and began taking screenshots. She worked methodically, her hands trembling, but her mind razor-sharp. 3 hours and 2 cups of cold coffee later, her bedroom walls were covered in digital evidence. Her laptop screen displayed multiple browsers, each tracking a different trail of James's digital footprint. She'd created a timeline using her project management software, plotting every inconsistency, every business trip, every late-night emergency meeting. "Oh God," Sarah whispered, connecting another dot. James's frequent Boston to New York trips aligned perfectly with Amanda's missing you posts. But it went deeper. A tagged photo from 2 years ago showed him at a Chicago Cubs game, his arm around Amanda, that same charming smile, but introducing himself as James Anderson to her friends in the comments. Sarah's phone buzzed. "James, missing your beautiful face. These New York meetings are endless. Call you at dinner?" She stared at his message, remembering how he taught her about venture capital over candlelit dinners. Now, using her corporate research skills, she discovered no record of Cooper Ventures or any variation of James's name in business registries. A new Instagram profile caught her eye, a woman named Rachel in Seattle sharing a photo of purple dahlias. "Best surprise from the best man." Hashtag blessed. The same flowers James had sent Sarah on their second date. The same caption. Her hands shaking. Sarah created a private Instagram account and messaged Amanda. The response came within minutes. "I've been trying to find you. There's so much you need to know." They switched to FaceTime. Amanda's face appeared, tear-stained but determined. "I found out about you last week," she said. "Then I discovered Rachel and Jennifer in Philadelphia, and..." Sarah's throat tightened as Amanda shared her screen, revealing a document she'd been compiling. 6 women, 3 cities. One man with multiple identities, but the same story about a childhood scar and saving a baby bird. "He's not in New York," Amanda said softly. "He's here in Chicago. With me. Or at least he was until an hour ago when I finally confronted him." "Sarah, we're not dealing with a cheater. This is his job, his life's work, and we're not the first ones." Sarah looked at her wall of evidence, her career-honed analytical skills revealing a pattern too precise to be anything but intentional. This wasn't just heartbreak, it was a carefully orchestrated long con, and she was just another mark in his game. The support group's video call window showed 28 faces, each bearing the same haunted expression Sarah now saw in her own mirror. 2 weeks had passed since the confrontation, and her inbox had exploded with messages from women across the country. Every story echoed her own with devastating similarity. "He proposed to me with a family heirloom ring," said a woman from Miami, her voice trembling. "Said it was his grandmother's. I found out later he'd bought identical rings for 3 other women." Sarah sat cross-legged on her couch, notebook open, documenting every detail. The marketing director in her couldn't help but analyze the pattern. Successful professional women, usually in their early 30s, often with recent career achievements. James hadn't just been dating them, he'd been targeting them. "I lost my entire savings," Jennifer from Philadelphia shared, her eyes hard with anger. "He convinced me to invest in his tech startup. The documents looked perfect. Even my lawyer thought they were legitimate." A notification pinged, another woman requesting to join the group. Lauren from Austin, recently engaged to James Anderson, who'd mysteriously disappeared last week. Sarah's stomach churned as she approved the request. How many more were out there? Her phone buzzed with a text from Lisa. "Leftover Thai food and emergency ice cream. Coming over. No arguments." Minutes later, Lisa used her spare key to enter, finding Sarah still glued to her laptop. The coffee table was covered with printouts, bank statements, photo timelines, social media screenshots. Sarah had thrown herself into investigation mode, trying to map James's movements across cities. "Honey," Lisa said gently, setting down the food, "when did you last sleep?" "I can't," Sarah whispered, her voice raw. "Every time I close my eyes, I see his face changing in that hotel room." That moment when the mask slipped, she shuddered. "How did I not see it?" "Because he's a professional," came Amanda's voice from the laptop. She'd stayed on after the group call ended. "Look at what we've pieced together. 10 years. Multiple identities. Careful targeting. This isn't just a player, Sarah. This is his career." Sarah's phone lit up with a news alert. Another woman had come forward in Chicago, claiming James had scammed her investment firm. The comment section was already filling with skepticism. Why did these women fall for it? How could they be so naive? "We need to do something," Sarah said, straightening. "These women, they're all like me. Successful, independent, smart. And he used that against us. Made us think our strength was why he loved us." Lisa squeezed her hand. "What are you thinking?" Sarah opened a new document, her fingers flying across the keyboard. "We document everything. Every pattern, every tactic, every red flag we missed. We create a database. We warn others." "It's dangerous," Amanda cautioned. "He's already threatened retaliation." "I know," Sarah replied, thinking of James's parting words. "But keeping silent? That's exactly what he's counting on. Our shame, our fear, our embarrassment." She looked at the faces on her screen, strangers who had become sisters through shared trauma. "Together, we're stronger than his threats."